Hello and thank you for joining us. You're listening to a We Do Talk with David Jaques.
Hi there, my name's Tom Russell. Welcome to We Do. Regular viewers will be well aware of our guest today. His name is David Jaques, and over the past year or so, David has conducted a good number of We Do talks. And for today, we've changed things around a little. We've tied him to a chair and moved him to the other side of the studio. And this time, this We Do talk is with David answering the questions.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be here and great to be on this side of the table. I think this is right around episode number 50. So we've been doing this for a couple of years now, almost. So we're at that number of episodes. So good to be here and good to be interviewed by you.
Can we start with your early days? You've lived for a number of years now in America, but you started off in England. When you left school, what did you do?
First job was with Barclays Bank, and that was not because I had an overriding desire to be a banker. In fact, I spent a good chunk of my career working for a bank, and I always say that I'm the banker that wasn't really a banker because I've never underwritten a loan and I've never done traditional banking business. So I joined Barclays Bank because I needed a job. It was a well-paid job. It was using my skills. I started out in the economic research department, and then I ended up specializing in currency and interest rate risk management, and grew with that market right at the time that markets in the UK were deregulating. And so, grew up with that market until the bank decided that New York would be the place for me to go.
What sort of year was it when you moved to New York?
That would be the early 90s that I moved to New York.
A young man, bit of career behind you, but your whole life in front of you, stepping into New York. What was it like at the start?
At the start, it was very exciting, but pretty soon after I got there, I realized that it wasn't going to be easy. And one of the funny things is that I had a language problem. And the problem was people didn't understand me. I mean, I grew up with American TV in the UK, so it was very common for me to listen to American voices, terminology, accents, and everything. So I could understand people just perfectly well. And then I would say something, and I'd get these blank looks, and people didn't understand me. So that took a little bit of a while to get used to, how you actually project yourself, how you talk. I'm not by nature a loud, fast talker. Most New Yorkers are loud, fast talkers and are very assertive. So I had to learn that and really learn that to fit in. And then socially, once again, when you move to a new city, you'd think intellectually that, a young single guy going from London to New York is going to have a great time. And I did have a great time, but it took me a while to find my feet. It took me quite a bit of time to really find where I belonged, where my friend group was going to be, where my social life was going to be. The main thing that got me into that world was joining a running club. And that was the activity that then took me to a whole different stratosphere of having friends and having people that were like my family around me.
Tomato, pavement, sidewalk.
I'm bilingual. I speak English and American. It depends a little bit who I talk to. I pretty soon after I got to the US, I started to use terminology. So I'd start to take out the trash and not take out the rubbish, and I would walk on the sidewalk and not the pavement. And I know that I've picked up somewhat of an American accent, idioms, the way that I pronounce some of the words. And people always, I think, hear what is unusual to them, because my family say that I sound completely American now. And yet my friends in the US think I still sound English. And my kids don't really see anything because they've never known me any other way. In fact, my daughter said once recently, she had some friends over, and one of her friends said, "Oh, your dad has a really cute accent." She's like, "My dad doesn't have an accent."
You mentioned before we switched the microphones on about the early days in New York. It was difficult to make friends because so many people were coming into New York to work for a year or 2 years and then move on. Was the running a way of circumventing that and becoming integrated with New York society?
Very much so for me. And what happened with those transient people was that I got introduced to a community of people that on paper would be a perfect friend group for me. And I'd moved in the August, and right before Christmas, I got invited to somebody's apartment, and it was somebody that worked at the British Embassy. And a whole bunch of people there, really nice people, all British expats. I think most of them were men, some of them working for private industry, some of them working for the UK Embassy and accompanying wives. And pretty soon the conversation got around to what a terrible place New York is. It's dirty, the people are rude, nothing is as good here as it is in England, and I can't wait to get home. And I'd been there about 4 months, and I'd actually quite enjoyed my time in New York. It's not a perfect city, and there's nothing you can do to change it. And that's one of the things I told myself was, if you don't like it here, you better leave, or you learn to like what you don't like, because you can't do anything to change it. And so with that group of people, it made me think, these people are very transitory. They're only going to be here for a short period of time. They're very negative on being here. Their heart is not here. I'd really rather integrate into the community as much as I can. One really good thing about New York is that there's so many immigrants there. So I was just one of many. And nobody is discriminated against due to their nationality. Discrimination happens everywhere, of course, but I found that coming from the UK, nobody really looked at me as being a foreigner because I do speak the same language. And then I would really recommend to anybody that is moving, especially if you move alone, you don't have family or friends with you, if you move to a new place, finding an activity that you really enjoy and finding like-minded people is really the basis to integrating into that community and finding your place.
After a few years in banking, David, there was a career change and you started work for a Finnish company.
That was actually the second job after banking. That was the way that happened. So the Finnish company was Nokia. And that was a great opportunity to work for the company that in those days was truly the leader in mobile phone technology in the world. This would have been 2002, 3, 4, 5, those type of years. And I was working in the financial area. I was CFO of the Nokia Venture Capital Fund. So I was part of the company, but I also was part of an independent group that was headquartered in California. And the culture of the company was just one of the best corporate cultures I've ever worked for. Incredibly respectful. Everybody really did what they were supposed to do. And one of the things I learned was if you commit to doing something, you have to deliver. If you say, I will get this to you by Thursday morning, you have to deliver it Thursday morning. Everybody else would do the same. So a great respectful culture. And one of the great things about working for Nokia was that I got to try out all the new phones before they went to market.
Astonishing that company that everyone has heard of, and I'm aware that they still make their phones, but at one period, around about the years that you're talking about, it was by far the world leader in mobile phones and mobile phone technology. And yet things have changed and they're still in the market, but nowhere near the world leader.
Absolutely not. It's sad what's happened to the company in many ways, but it is a company that's reinvented itself many times. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Nokia was actually founded in 1865, and it was a paper and rubber manufacturing company that drew the water from the river Nokia, which is how it got its name. Somewhere in central Finland, I believe. And they transitioned out of that to electronics. They did consumer electronics. They did household appliances. Then they got into mobile phone technology. So it's a company that really had reinvented itself. But the downfall of the company, I think, was that they were very strong in Europe. They missed the opportunity of the US market and missed the smartphone opportunity. And although right around, I'd say, the 2007, 6, 7 time when the iPhone first came out and other smartphones first came out, They weren't as fast to market, and they still had the predominance in Europe. And then US started to lead with the smartphone technology and the smartphone product. And that then came to Europe, and it was the Apple iPhone, and it was the Android, and it was the Samsung phones that really took over. So, yeah, Nokia still exists today, but it's actually run by Microsoft.
What was next for you and your family?
So at that point, I was well established in California. The piece between banking and working for Nokia was actually working for PayPal. And so that was the transition I did out of the banking world into the startup world. And I often describe it as a little startup that nobody had ever heard of called PayPal, which was 12 guys working in a room about the size of the room we're in right now, above a Hallmark greeting card store on University Avenue in Palo Alto. And that was the beginning of the company, and it grew while I was there from a dozen people to more than 500 people, and we raised 150 million in equity capital at grossly inflated valuations, but that was the dot-com era, so it was possible to do that. And depending upon the day that you talked to me, it was the best job in the world, the worst job in the world, the most exciting, the most frightening, the most intimidating, the most motivating, and that could change during the day as well.
That small group of you in the early days that you're talking about, a dozen of you in a small office. What was the vision for PayPal in those very early days?
The original product was actually a mobile product, but the device that it was designed for was the Palm Pilot. And anybody that was around and had devices in the late 1990s may remember the Palm Pilot, which was a disconnected device, and it had basic capabilities of calendar, contacts, and a few apps that we would know today, but you had to sync it with your desktop computer in order to transfer the data. So the original PayPal product was designed for use on the Palm Pilot, so that if I had PayPal on my Palm Pilot, I could beam money to you onto your Palm Pilot. So very clunky technology compared to today's standards. Nothing was instantaneous. And the interesting thing is, and once again, how things can reinvent themselves, because it was this Palm Pilot, and we're actually thinking of creating a bank to be behind it. And then secondly, we realized that we could attach a payment to an email. And remember the movie at the time, You've Got Mail? Mm. And we actually trademarked You've Got Cash. And so you could attach a payment to an email. I could send an email to you with an attachment to it, and you could then open the attachment, create a PayPal account, and accept the money that I'd sent you. So that was much more viral, because how many Palm Pilots were in existence in 1999 versus how many email addresses? Magnitudes more, many, many more email addresses. So that became the second iteration. And the third iteration was, maybe we could take this to the auction sites. And eBay, who was not a friend at the time, but ended up acquiring the company, eBay, which had grown phenomenally and had started this whole new disruptive marketplace where people could buy and sell things between each other. And in those days, if I was selling something to you on eBay, as the seller, what I would do is we'd agree the price, you'd mail me a check, I'd deposit the check, wait a week for the check to clear, and then I'd mail you the item that you bought. So it's 2 weeks from the time that you actually do the transaction until you get it. And eBay had looked at buying an escrow company, and there wasn't really anything out there. They tried to do something in-house. Nothing had really been done. And suddenly this PayPal product comes along, and you can use it to pay somebody instantly. So instead of doing that whole check thing where it takes a couple of weeks, you can pay me instantly and I get the money right away. I ship it to you the same day.
Fabulous idea.
Yeah.
Recently, as in just in the last few weeks, eBay, it's changed the way they use PayPal.
Well, there's been a whole change in that connection, because PayPal went public in February of 2002 and then got acquired by eBay in October, I think, of the same year, possibly the following year. And so eBay basically bought PayPal and integrated it. And the PayPal product was eBay. It was an eBay product. And then back in 2016, I think, such a large proportion of the eBay profits were coming from PayPal, they separated and spun off the company. So now they're two separate companies today. So while there is a relationship between the two, back in the time when eBay owned PayPal, they would only accept PayPal because it was their product. But these days, eBay will accept a lot more different payment mechanisms.
In the early days in PayPal, there was another guy on the team who's gone on to do reasonably well, and Mr. Musk. Memories of working with him?
So there were two companies, and I think a lot of people don't really understand how the company was organized and who came from where. So the original PayPal company was founded by Peter Thiel and Max Levchin. And Max, who was one of the most brilliant engineers that I've ever met, basically created the PayPal product. He was the brains behind the product. Peter was the business person. So that was the company that I first joined. Actually, the name of the company was Confinity. Not many people know that. And the reason that name came out was that Max Levchin was a computer security guy. Cryptography was really his product. That was his thing. And so it was all designed around security, which for a financial product, same here at We Do, it's going to be a financial product, and top security is the really important, probably the most paramount thing. And so so that's where Max's brain was. So the name Confinity had two meanings, either confined to infinity, which meant the information could not be leaked anywhere, or infinite confidence. And makes sense, you can explain it, but it doesn't have a very good ring to it. And so we decided the name of the product couldn't be Confinity, and then soon after we actually hired a branding agency to come up with a new name, and the two runners-up were PayPal and Cache, spelled C-A$HE with an accent. And PayPal was the winner. So it became named as PayPal. And then just down the street, a few blocks down, was another company called X.com, founded by Elon Musk. And he'd also started a product very similar, purely by coincidence and total coincidence that we were in the same town and doing the same thing. And in fact, we even realized that we occupied the same building for a brief period of time and didn't really know what the other company was doing. And so X.com was going off and doing its thing, had a lot of money, had a lot of good people. PayPal was going off and doing its thing and had the superior product. I am biased here, but it did have the superior product. And after a few months, we had this adversarial relationship between the two companies, and both companies had raised a huge amount of money, were throwing out massive amount of money to try and kill the competition. And then we did start talking to the other side, and realized that if we combined the companies, then we'd be a very formidable force, because then there would be no competition. We'd said, okay, even if we have to be number two, that's not a bad position to be in. But if you combine, you can be number one, and there is no competition. So that's when we merged. We brought the two companies together. We had a revolving door of CEOs for a while. We had Peter Thiel was the CEO. Then when the merger happened, Peter stepped down and stepped into a board position. Bill Harris was there, who was the former CEO of Intuit. He left the company shortly thereafter. Elon Musk was then appointed CEO, and then Peter Thiel came back after Elon Musk left the company. So it was a very chaotic environment. Startups are usually chaotic. Working with Elon Musk was not an enjoyable time of my career. I will say in his defense that things like electric cars and spaceships and solar power are much more his scene than payments. I think he was completely miscast in that role, or had miscast himself in that role. And it just wasn't a fit. And it ended up not being an enjoyable time for me. And, if you work for a startup, any startup, You expect to work long hours. You expect to be very focused. You expect to have to be on call. You expect to have to turn around very quickly and do a lot of things. But under Elon, it got to the point where I had no life. And that was when I really took stock of my personal life. We had a young baby that I was not seeing, not spending any time at home, barely, even on weekends. And I just really took a hard look at what are the important things in life. And it had been a wonderful ride. It had been phenomenally exciting. I'd met some great people, but I decided that was the time to move on.
As we said at the start, David, you have done quite a number of these We Do talks over the past year or so. And one thing that comes across to me watching them is your deep interest in mental health. How did that come about?
There's a history of mental illness in my family. My father, who passed away many years ago now, I'm pretty convinced suffered from bipolar disorder. My memories were that he had very erratic mood swings. And from the memories that I've got, that's what I think might have been the case. And it can be hereditary, not necessarily always so, but it can be. But I actually suffered from bout of mental illness at a very young age, starting around the age of 11. And went through pretty major depression. What many people don't know about me, they look at me as the high-functioning Silicon Valley executive, and sure, I am proud of a lot of things that I've done in my life and in my career, but nobody knew that I was once a suicidal teenager because I never told anyone. I mean, my family knew. In more recent years, I'd confided that sort of stuff in my family. And I had a major relapse in about 2003. I had to go back onto medication and go through therapy and some treatment. And that got me stable. One of the things that's kept me stable during my adult life has been marathon running, distance running, and just keeps me very focused. And when I'm doing that, I'm training for something positive. I eat well, I sleep well, I keep hydrated, I keep myself fit. I'm developing things in a very positive way. So that's been a huge stabilizing factor. And it was probably about 3.5 years ago now. I'd given this some thought for a long time when I realized that there's this part of me that I didn't talk about. It's almost like I felt ashamed of it. And I realized at one point, wait a minute, I haven't done anything to be ashamed of. This isn't something that I've done deliberately. And you do something bad, you do something to wrong somebody, you can apologize, you can make amends for that. But when you do something that you didn't ask for, why should you be ashamed of it? Why should you hide from it? And in December of 2018, I had 4 events that happened in very quick succession in that 1 month. I had a car accident. Myself and my passenger were not hurt, but the car was pretty badly banged up. I lost a relative. My uncle passed away, and he was the last remaining relative of my mother's siblings. So that was like the end of that generation. Then I was the victim of a very evil and malicious cyber attack in which a criminal act had taken place. Not my money that was stolen, it was a client's money that was stolen. And then soon after, I learned that my 18-year-old nephew had attempted to take his own life. And fortunately, he's doing well. And that really was a turning point for me of, once again, taking stock of your life, looking at what are the important things, what are the things that you should be focusing on. And it's really that very cliche, but life is too short. And I said, things like a car accident and the death of a relative, you can overcome, you can deal with them. Things that are bigger and more meaningful need to be talked about. And then I started looking at numbers. I started researching people that do take their own lives. And as I say, when I say I was a suicidal teenager, I never came close to attempting to take my own life, but I had the thoughts. I had the suicidal ideation for sure. And a couple of times as an adult, my mind has kind of gone along that way. And then I realized that I was one of the lucky ones because I never got to that point of desperation that I actually thought of doing something harmful to myself or to anybody else. And so that's when I decided that one of the things that was really important to me was to be a mental health advocate, an advocate for well-being, general well-being, and that becomes part of the whole package of taking good care of ourselves. So that was really the start of it. Wasn't really quite sure how to do it, what I would do. Do you start off doing podcasts? Do you write blogs? Do you write a book? Who's going to read it? I didn't really know how to start with it. And so having this We Do platform to be able to use that has been just phenomenal for me. And so, yes, it is a big piece of the interest of what I believe in. I'm also a great believer that a great underserved community in the world of mental health is adult men, because women are much better at talking about their feelings. I put it in the same way. One of the guys I interviewed over a year ago now, a guy named Joe Hurd, and he had been diagnosed with prostate cancer at the age of 46, which is very unusual, very young. He talked about how lonely he felt, how isolating that was. And what we talked about was, once again, prostate cancer is something that's not really talked about. Most men, if you live long enough, will have some form of it in their lifetime. Women are very good about talking about breast cancer, prevention, testing, making sure that you do the right things. It's a very open concept, and they talk to each other about it, which is great. Men don't do that. Similarly with feelings and how we're doing with mental health, women are much more likely to seek help when they need it and help each other. Men are much less likely to do that. So one of my missions is to make sure that adult men are not ignored, because 75% of suicides, I'm quoting numbers and I don't have a backup for, but this is what I've heard, is 75% of suicides are adult men. So I think it's very important to get that word out. And once again, it's those 4 words I so believe in: you are not alone. It's very easy to feel isolated, very easy to feel cut off, very easy to feel helpless and hopeless. But there is help, there is hope, there are friends, there are people, there is support.
2-3 years ago, David, you met Indiana Gregg. She had this idea of a startup, a business, a concept, a new way of doing things. And she'd come up with the name We Do. Can you remember that first meeting with her? Can you remember how impressed you were with her? And can you remember how she managed to persuade you to become part of We Do?
I actually met Indiana Gregg, we call her Indy for short. I actually met her before that time, pre-We Do, when her and I were both actually doing some consulting work for another company. And that's how we met. And the CEO of the other company, which was a California company, had engaged Indy to do a few things. And so this name, Indiana Gregg, was just a name on an email. And I sort of copied on a few emails here and there and didn't really think very much of it. And one of the things I knew that she was doing was redesigning the website. And I thought, oh yeah, she's some website designer, some graphic designer, which she is, but that's probably a tiny portion of what her capabilities are. And so that went on for some time. And then we actually started following each other on Facebook and realized that we had a lot of similar views on social, economic, political things. And she actually reached out to me one day with an email and said, I've been following you on Facebook, love to get the opportunity to chat to you. Can we have a chat? So we did, and we talked. And she was doing, as I say, independent consulting for a number of companies, doing a lot of different things, as was I, and we just overlapped on this one. And she was working for a different company altogether at the time, and asked if I'd like to be involved, and I said that was a possibility, so we talked a little bit more. And then the company that we were both involved in, we got the opportunity to meet in New York. And once again, Indy and I just seemed very aligned in our thinking on strategy for this company and everything. So we clearly had the same type of thinking from a business standpoint. And then I actually found myself in Spain in February of 2020, right before the COVID shut down, and got the opportunity to come here to Valencia and just spend a weekend with Indy and Ian, her husband, and their cats and dogs, and had a great time. So we got to chat some more, and that was when she gave me a little bit of the overview of this idea that she got, and it sounded kind of neat. And then we kind of lost touch a little bit. COVID happened, then everything shut down, and it was probably about 4 months later when I remember the day I got the ping on my iPhone one day, and it was a text message, and it was a text from Indy, and it was something like, David, something magical has happened. You have to be involved in this. I need you here with me. Can you do a call tomorrow? So, okay. And over the years, I've lived in Silicon Valley. I've worked in venture capital. I've worked a lot with startups, and you hear things like, this is the next big thing, or this is going to be bigger than Facebook. You hear all these things, and you take them with a grain of salt. But Indy had credibility and a lot of good ethics and integrity. And I thought, sure, this is the sort of person. I mean, people buy from people. It's all a relationship thing. And the fact that I already knew her, I was absolutely, if Indy's got something to share, let's listen. And I joined this call, and there was a couple of other people on it that she'd already signed up to be involved. And she told me the idea and what it was all about, and it just seemed like such a great idea to me. And so she said, David, what do you think? I said, I'm in. Simple as that.
In layman's terms, I stress the layman's terms, what is We Do?
We Do is going to be, and it will be launching very soon, really a community. And it's also a tool that's going to be focused on people who are freelancers, independent workers, independent contractors, gig economy workers who don't have that safety net of a corporation around them. And so the product is a technology tool which will combine communicating with clients, the ability to do an online session, and take a payment all under one place. So right now, if you're a contractor and you're running your own business, you're probably using text messages and WhatsApp and email to communicate. You've got a calendar to make your appointments. You send people to Zoom or to WhatsApp video or to Facebook video or something, and then you send them to PayPal or Venmo or Cash App or bank app or whatever. And this will put it all in one place, and with a no subscription model. So what that means is that you don't pay a monthly subscription, you don't pay a retainer or anything like that. We will make its money on accepting payments because it is going to be a full service back-end bank. And also, as I said before, it's a sense of community. So the idea is to create this community where a lot of like-minded people can learn from each other and teach each other, and realize once again, you're not alone. There's other people out there that are doing this, other people that have done it, skills out there that can be shared. And it can also be used for people like engineers and people that are providing services. But the other world, your world, which is really the entertainment world and the creative world of, why couldn't people use this to promote their music, their songwriting, their creations, their performances? And this will be a method of the way to do that. So a little bit of a long-winded answer, but it isn't a simple, easy description of what we do, because we do a lot.
And how difficult has it been over the past year or so persuading other people to come on board? When you paint the picture for them, you give them the vision, how difficult has it been? People have said, oh, right, let me think about it.
Sure, that happens. People are going to be skeptical of anything new. One of the things I'll preface this with is that when I first worked for PayPal and I told people what we were doing, one of the responses I get the most often was, you can't do that. I say, well, why not? Oh, it's never been done before. And from that changed my whole philosophy on anything in business is, if it's never been done before, maybe now is the time to try it. So similarly, I come into WeDo with a very similar philosophy of, let's try this. Let's try putting all of these pieces together, and let's try serving a community that is not already being served. And so in terms of bringing other people on board, well, there's two things where you really need to sell the company. One is to good individuals to have work on the product and work in the company, and the other is to investors, because you can't do it without money. And we've been fortunate in both that we've been able to attract very good people to come and work for the company. People who buy into the mission, believe in the mission, really want to see this succeed, really want to see it work. And we've been able to convince investors to put money into the company. And once we got first, second round of investment, then we could start hiring people. And any startup is in constant fundraising mode. But those things are getting traction, and it's been great, the quality of people that we've attracted. But I use the word we. Indy is really the person that is able to go out and attract those people and get those people on board and get them committed. So it's been a very fortunate run so far.
When do you think the full-scale WeDo will launch?
So there's going to be a soft launch coming out very soon. We've got a number of users who have reserved their username and expressed an early interest. We're going to launch that version in that private launch. Among those people, it's going to be couple of thousand people maybe, and the full-scale launch will probably go out in, I'd say, the third quarter of this year. That's 2022 for anybody that's watching in the future.
David, an absolute pleasure chatting with you about WeDo today, and I wish you all the best with it in the future. I'm looking forward to being part of it, and thank you for talking.
It's my pleasure. This was easier than I thought. I guess I'm an okay interviewee.
You did all right.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this WeDo Talk. I'm Tom Russell, and subscribe to our channel and leave your comments below. All the best. Cheers.
We upload a WeDo Talk every week, so if you enjoyed this one, please subscribe and leave your comments below.